we are in an era where people, especially younger audiences, are now expecting more personalized and authentic experiences. We have to really get comfortable moving away from this model of just pushing out content to really curating conversations and building these and focusing on value-driven interactions.
That was the amazing Cam Sanders. She is an association marketing genius, and she joins me this week to cover marketing trends that are shaping the future, whether we want to accept it or not.
That's also why it's so important for associations to periodically go back to members and ask them to update their member profiles. So you know what people are interested in, you know what they do, you know why they're coming to you.
Cam tells us where association marketing is headed, and she points out why embracing authenticity is right near the top of the list for what associations need to know when it comes to what is working today.
Transparency is big right now. People don't expect perfection necessarily, but they do expect honesty.
Tune in now as Cam shares how to rethink your messaging, to refresh your campaigns, and to lead your organization forward in today's shape-shifting, wild, and unimaginable environment. When we're looking at Cam Sanders, what was that story? How did you get from where you started to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and again, thank you for having me today. My story with associations is, I think, one that, in terms of workforce development, is one that we probably want to see a little bit more often in the association space. I was in college, and I was looking for a job, like a part-time job, to have some extra money in my pocket. So I went to my college career center looking for some leads on that. And I was directed to an association call center who was looking they were a 24/7 call center. And so they had some shifts that allowed me to still do my classes in the morning, and then just do like the call center customer service stuff in the evening. And I worked a 12 to 9 shift, if you can believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
12 to 9, not my favorite.
it
That
was
would not be my
it was
favorite.
a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. But that's how I started. And I loved the work. I stepped into for-profit for a little bit, and then stepped right back out and came back over to the nonprofit side, and sort of found my home in associations.
I love it. Well, it's interesting because, I think that a story like that means that you were probably talking with a lot of different people. You were having a lot of different experiences. You were facing a lot of different stressors.
Yeah.
And that requires a person, I think, to learn how to weather many different types of storms. And so because of your history with marketing and because of your history with associations, if you've looked around, you've seen a lot change, and the marketing landscape has changed quite a bit too. If you look back at what the marketing, what our environment looked like 10 years ago to today, what do you think has shifted in that time? How has marketing changed? And maybe what is it that association marketers need to pay attention to right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift that I have seen, and I think we can look forward to seeing perhaps in the next few years as well, is a greater move away from transactional marketing into more relational marketing. And I think that's largely because we are in an era where people, especially younger audiences, are now expecting more personalized and authentic experiences from the organizations that they're engaging with. So what that means for associations, in my opinion, is that we have to really get comfortable moving away from this model of just pushing out content to really curating conversations and building and focusing on value-driven interaction. So that's where I see this going, and I'm beginning to see that that tide turn a bit more now.
Why do you think it is moving away from that transactional kind of more traditional kind of marketing?
Yeah, I think it's largely because transparency is
Mhm.
big right now, right? It's and you and I talked a little bit about this in our conversation on my podcast. The fact that trust is huge for people.
Yeah.
People don't expect perfection necessarily, but they do expect honesty, and they expect for associations and other businesses to show up authentically, right?
Mhm.
And to know them, right? To know about them. And I like to call that part of it the Amazon effect, right? When we log in, if you have an Amazon account, when you log into that account, they know about you based on your previous purchases, your patterns and your history. There is, they're able to make some recommendations about what you might like or what you should purchase and things like that. And I think, that gives people, even though that's a very transactional thing, it also gives people this sense that I'm known in this space.
Mm, mhm.
Associations need to approach that a different way because obviously we aren't just trying to sell people things all the time. But I think we can learn from that model of using, the data and the information that we have about people in a responsible way to help build that transparency, to help build that authenticity and trust.
I love that. I mean, I really think that is key too, because you said something in there like we don't always want to be selling them something. And it's not just about that. It's we're getting to know. I feel like it's couched like that many times,
Yeah.
but we're getting to know our members and our we can call them our customers. We're getting to know them not just because we want to sell to them, but also because that kind of communication, that kind of engagement helps us to build things that have more value for those people. And so I think that is such a key. I'm so glad you mentioned that. We're seeing increased skepticism around institutions that have existed for a long time. So in your view, what does it take for associations to build trust when so many people are tuning out of traditional messaging and not looking at the same places that they always have?
Yeah. I think, I would go back to transparency for sure.
Mhm.
And what that looks like, Kiki, is I think for associations to be a bit more courageous in letting members come behind the curtain a little bit and understand the inner workings. So, for example, how that what that plays out to in a real life scenario is letting people understand the decision making processes like that the
Mm.
association is going through. So for example, especially if it's something that is going to impact the member experience and how they engage with the association, a decision's being made, something's changing, invite them behind the curtain. How did you make this decision? Why? Right? Also being upfront about challenges, right? Some industries are facing more challenges right now than others, and that has a trickle down effect onto associations. So
Mhm.
being upfront about that and letting people know and understand what's happening and how the association is addressing it. And if there are specific nuances, helping people understand the why, really.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that moving into a space where messaging is more of a dialogue and less of a broadcast, I think
Mhm.
is going to be really important as we're talking about building trust in our association communities. So those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about right now, and that I'm seeing successful associations doing.
So technology is a big part of marketing. You can't talk about marketing, you can't talk about messaging without including a little bit of discussion around technology and especially AI these days.
Yeah.
It's certainly changed how we're communicating. And so, what are some of the ways that associations can use this technology without getting overwhelmed? And what do you see that's actually working?
Mm. The possibilities are endless. Let me just start there, right? I think AI is going to be, particularly for smaller or resource limited associations, I think it's going to be a real game changer. I think it's going to
Mhm.
be what I like to call the great leveler, right?
Mm.
Leveling the playing field between resource limited organizations and some of the larger groups that have been able to do more because they've had more people, right? They've had more technology, and AI is closing that gap, and it's closing it rapidly. Some of the things that associations can do with this technology, with the right resources and tools, are things like being able to analyze member behavior, right?
Mhm.
Also being able to, automate some of the routine tasks that need to be done without adding a ton more staff to do it, right? It's not about replacing staff. It's about, in my opinion, it's about augmentation, right? But being able to do some of that through technology. Also being able to do more personalization and generation of content, right? Getting
Mhm.
you to a starting point, right? So whereas you may have felt like, oh gosh, I don't have a copywriter on my team. I'm a small association. What am I going to do, to write this compelling copy? Well, AI can help with that now. So there are lots of things, I think, that could potentially change the game in terms of allowing associations, large and small, but particularly smaller because they tend to be more resource limited, and getting them in that space where they can really keep up with the flow of change.
You talked about a lot of opportunity there, that it is a game changer. 100% agree. Do you think it is being used to its greatest effect right now by most associations?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I think I knew it was like a softball question, but like I kind of figured that's what you would say. And like, and
Yeah.
so why? What's your
Yeah.
what? Yeah.
Well, I think there's just not enough known about it. I think, but interestingly, in my day job, I work for an association that specializes in tech. Our members are cybersecurity professionals and folks who do data governance and risk management and all those things. And I think we are offering things like more certifications, and we have been for a really long time. So this is not something that's new, but we are offering certifications for our members to make sure that they are skilled and that they can empower their organizations to use this technology responsibly and in a forward-thinking and innovative way. So I think, it's all about people getting more comfortable and more
Mhm.
educated with what AI can do, but also about the pitfalls of it as well, and understanding that, like any other piece of technology or any other thing that has ever come out, there's going to be a learning curve, but we have to get comfortable starting where we are. And I think a lot of associations have not done that. And I think the reasons run the gamut. For some of them, again, it's just a lack of understanding, maybe a lack of education about the possibilities. But then for some, I think it may be fear-based, right? People
Mhm.
are worried about, if I'm a writer in an association, I might be a little bit nervous that, gosh, are they going to need me anymore if we start using these AI tools? But
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that, in those instances, I think, again, we as association professionals have to educate ourselves about how we can be using these tools to augment our jobs and to augment our work, and not be so worried about replacement. Because the reality is, KiKi, we have all been using AI for a long time in our personal lives.
Mhm.
If you have an iPhone and you have ever used Siri, you've been using AI, right? If you've
Yes.
got any of those neat speakers and things like that, that you can talk to and get the weather and and turn on your music and things, that's AI. Like, so
Mhm.
using it for a long time. It's just time for us to get comfortable with putting it into our workspace.
As we're talking about AI and we're talking about some of these things that have been going on and affecting change in marketing and in the ways that we communicate and make things happen, data and automation are some issues that we're going to that have to come into play. And so, the big concern is, how do we keep things human? How do we throw respect to the human element? And also, how can associations respect privacy while still delivering these personalized experiences? So what are your thoughts about some of the ethical concerns with you know using this technology and communicating with our members?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to associations needing to really invest in understanding the possibilities for the technology. Particularly, if you're an association that's large enough to have IT staff or an IT liaison, invest in them getting that education. So maybe you can't afford for all 50 or all 100 of your staff to go to this training, but make sure that the core staff that are responsible for implementation of your tech stack and of all of your technology all the way around is educated in these things, and maybe do some in-house trainings and help people to understand what is permissible and recommended and what is not, right? I think that's a starting point, particularly for organizations, again, that may be resource limited and not able to do like huge or large trainings or pay for certifications for everybody, right? That's a place to start. And I think educating your staff that that pathway to trust with how we're using member data, how we're implementing and using these technologies really begins in two spaces. I think consent is one
Mhm.
place, and
Mhm.
also clarity, right? So making sure that as we are gathering people's information, that we're getting consent, right? That they understand what they're giving us and why they're giving it to us, right? And that's where the clarity feeds in, right? Making
Yeah.
sure that they understand not just what they're giving us, why they're giving it to us, but also understand how we're going to use it, and that they understand our commitment to being respectful and responsible with their data. And I think those are the integral pieces of making sure that our community trusts us with their information. And, on the off chance, I mean, we never want anything like this to happen, but on the off chance that something is compromised, being forthright with the community about what happened, how it happened, and how the association has taken steps to ensure that as much as possible, it doesn't happen again, is very, very important as well.
So I think I love that response, because I always, when I end up talking about the topic of trust, I say when you lose trust, it always comes down to one of two things, right? Or maybe both. It's character or competence. And the character is, are your intentions good? Can I trust you with, are you is what you say actually a true representation? Can I trust that you're giving me the truth, right? Or that you're not doing something nefarious with my data? Then competence would be, do I trust that you actually can do what you say that you're going to do, or that you actually have the resources that you say that you have? It's like this competence or character. And most trust issues, if not all, I haven't seen any that don't actually somehow filter into one of those two buckets. So when you said consent and clarity, I
Mhm.
thought absolutely, because that clarity allows people to understand better how is it that this stuff is being used, or if something happened, what happened, and what's happening next, to allow them to figure out that they can trust in the decision making that exists there and in the institution itself. So, what do you think associations are underusing in terms of channels, marketing channels, or tactics? Is there anything that they're overlooking in general that you think could make a real difference in engagement?
Mm. Yeah, there are a few things. One is, I think, podcasts are underrated, right?
Mhm.
I think we see more associations leaning into that. And I think everybody worries, oh gosh, we're going to be another association doing another podcast. But what they fail to realize, those who are thinking like that, is that you aren't promoting your podcast to all the other podcasts. You are
Mm.
promoting your podcast to your members in your industry community, right? And
Mhm.
if the market is not oversaturated for podcasts and information in your industry, there is still a value add for your association potentially doing something along those lines. So I think it's another way to connect. People are increasingly using this as a medium for information. So I think there's an opportunity there. Also using some of the influencers in your communities,
Mm.
building partnerships, like sort of those micro influencer partnerships is a idea that I think could be cultivated a bit more. You don't see it very often, but I always think it's cool when associations lean into that and take a step into in the newness of it, right? It's not new on the for-profit side of things. For-profit businesses have been doing partnerships with influencers forever, but associations have not leveraged that, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is, and this will be my final point on it, is community-led content, I think. So I'm talking about UGC, user-generated content, making your members the storytellers. Also, really leaning into more member spotlights and webinars and things like that center your members as the subject matter experts, rather than always leaning on the association in that way. I think the association has a real opportunity to act as a facilitator of dialogue and a facilitator of knowledge. And I think that is the type of thing that is going to build more credibility and more engagement in content over time.
Yeah, and I do think that like to think about things like user generated content, and also when you're thinking about things like influencer campaigns. Yeah, I've brought up influencer campaigns specifically to a couple of clients in the past, and they almost always, well, in both times, in I would say the past year, it was like an immediate disinterest in talking any more about it. Did not want to hear anything about it. By the way, the influencers that in both situations where I was talking about building this out, they didn't want to hear about any sort of influencer campaign. And it would have led to these influencers, these campaign ideas would have led to more user generated content. Like the two would have dovetailed really well together. But they had zero interest. And I think it's because a lot of times there's this idea of what that means. Like maybe they're thinking back to, like we're not going to work with Kim Kardashian to like speak to our members or something. And then in other cases, they might have had a bad trial with it, a bad test run, and they're just closed off to the idea completely. Have you had that kind of experience? Have you heard that kind of feedback from anyone? Or is it just my good luck that I have like run into the pushback? I'm curious about this.
No, I think that people are reticent to lean into it. I agree with you there. And I think I'm not going to speculate as to why. I don't really know why, but I do think that it doesn't make sense to me, though. Like, I have to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
me, because we all, like, if you are on social media at all, like, we have all been influenced by an influencer at some point. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, we've all seen
Yes.
somebody, particularly if you're on platforms like TikTok, like that is all about like the influencers, even people who do not consider themselves influencers, and may just be recommending a lipstick or an eyeshadow or something. I saw
Yes.
something just the other day, a woman, she was just doing a makeup video, and I thought, and she's talking about this color lipstick that she's wearing, and I'm thinking in my head, oh, that would, like, she has the same skin tone as me, like that would probably look
Yeah.
really good on me, and I ordered it. So
I
it's,
I know.
you
It
know
totally works, Cam. It totally
yeah.
works.
And
Yes.
she was not, I mean, she went to great lengths to say that she was not being paid as a sponsor or an influencer by this company.
Mhm.
It was just something that she really liked and was sharing with her followers. So I think associations are missing an opportunity there. And I would encourage any association professionals who are listening, and maybe have influence within your organizations, to bring these types of ideas forward, to consider doing it. I mean, be very thoughtful and intentional about the way
Mhm.
that you do it, because I mean, we would be remiss in not acknowledging that associations have, a brand to protect, right? And there can be reputational harm if you use someone that doesn't quite stand for the values of your organization. So you do need to be very intentional and thoughtful about how you approach it. It needs to be a very structured approach, but
Mhm.
but be open to it, even if it's just a pilot. And if it doesn't, like to your point, KiKi, if it doesn't work out, then nix it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe come back to the drawing board later with the new plan at some point. But don't be closed off to these ideas before you've even tried them, because you might just be missing out on your next big thing. I mean, think about the ways that an influence in your industry could help elevate interest in someone registering for your annual conference, or
Oh, yeah.
some other
Yeah.
big ticket event or product that your organization has. There's real potential there.
Some of the like maybe underutilized approaches in associations and in association marketing, paid marketing, advertising, right? So
Mhm.
paid social media advertising specifically.
Mhm.
And I have seen, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about, everyone's favorite association of associations, to talk about
Yeah.
ASAE's annual meeting advertising that's out there is
Yeah.
killing it. Great job, ASAE marketing. I'm so glad that you're
Yes.
doing this. It's showing up on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm seeing it on I think LinkedIn too. And I keep coming across it. And I just want to say, good job to you all, because I don't recall seeing it as much in the past, if
Mhm.
at all. And I have to say that it is standing out. It is
Yes.
making a difference. That movement. What do you think? Have you seen it too? Have you seen this out there?
I have, and as you know, I worked at ASAE for a little while, so I know the marketing lead there well, Sue,
Yeah.
and Sue really leaned into expanding digital marketing when she came on board, and she and her team have been doing a bang up job. I have seen the
Yeah.
advertising as well, and you're right,
Yeah.
Kiki, like you and I both have been in the association community, like in the ASAE community,
For
for a
a
really
bit.
long time. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
really long time.
It's been a
We're
little
not going to
bit.
date ourselves here, but we've
Yeah.
been around for a little while. And you're right. We didn't see it for a while because for a while it wasn't a thing, right? And
Yeah.
but even when it was a thing, I think it took a while to put that strategy together. But they've got it going now, and it is hot.
I
It
do.
is smoking right now. So yes,
It's
shout out to ASAE on that.
Shout out to ASAE. I also will say Sidecar Sync, which is a another association podcast.
Yeah.
I want to give them a little bit of love, a little shout out here too. I've been noticing their paid advertising, and it is so killer. It's so good.
Yeah.
And I mean, to say that about paid advertising is saying something, right? Because a lot of times I think that the reason that we haven't seen associations lean into it is because it can be kind of boring. And in both of these cases, it has stood out to me. The pieces with Sidecar Sync that I've noticed that I like has been that they're using clips that are funny and that are interesting, that are and sometimes it's not exactly the stuff that I recognize from their show. It
Mhm.
might be somebody I don't know what this is about, or it's like a video that seems maybe unrelated until you listen to it or read it. And then some of it's funny clips from the show, but it's been really interesting to see what they're doing and has made me pay attention. And I'm going to say one more example that I've noticed a lot lately, and that is from an adjacent industry in the events industry. Julia Solaris and Bold Push have been killing it with their content marketing, and they have for a while. But his experiments into paid advertising have been really, really good. Mm-hmm. And again, entertaining, where if I come across it, it's so good, everyone, that like when I come across it in Instagram, I look at Instagram a lot. When I come across it, I don't always know it has anything to do with associations or events. But I stop. It makes me pause the scroll to look at it. And I'm like, oh, this is Bold Push. Oh, I love that. I think it's so smart. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to give a little love. And I also wanted to find out if you'd seen some of this stuff too, because it's very exciting, I think.
Yes, for sure. And I think that these are great examples for associations to light the way, right? Again, as we all know, for-profit companies have been doing this forever. It's a bit newer to our sector, and just seeing organizations lean into it and try new things, I think is really exciting. And I'm excited with what I'm seeing out there right now.
You have led through a lot of change in your history, and you've looked at organizational, technological, even cultural change. What's your personal approach to staying creative and grounded when everything feels in flux? And sort of give us your take on leading through change.
Yeah. For me, I think the key is really staying curious. Being curious is really important because inspiration can come from any number of sources. I can get inspired by something I see on social media, or I can get inspired from having a coffee chat with someone else in the industry, right? It can come from fashion, right? It can come from anywhere. And so I think being open to that influence in different spaces, even in the for-profit space, like not being afraid as association and nonprofit professionals to look over and on the for-profit side of things and see what they're doing and see where maybe some of their processes or some of their technology and some of these other things could potentially augment what we're doing on the mission focused side of things is key. And it keeps us from getting into that mindset of the way we've always done it, or, being so married to a specific process or way of doing things. So I think in terms of leading through change, and the way that I approach it is staying curious, but also just leading through change. I think the key is just to remain open to new ideas, because when you close yourself off to that, I think you're taking yourself and potentially your organization down a not so great road. So that's my approach.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about some of the outdated marketing habits that you are still seeing, the things that we need to retire for good that are still lingering out there. Are there any of those? Do you see any that you're just like, enough already? Enough. Like, let's stop the madness. Yes.
Can I scream from the rafters? Yes, that there are. One of the biggest ones that is a pet peeve for me is the mass email without any segmentation, sort of the one size fits all email.
Yes.
We've got to stop it. Oh my goodness. Like there is so much data that we have right now. There are so many opportunities through using different, tools and resources, marketing automation platforms, things like that, where we can create audiences, we can target people. And as membership organizations, most of us collect a massive amount of information on our members, on those, lengthy membership applications that we ask people to fill out, whether it be online or whatever. So what people are interested in, what they do, why they're coming to you as a member potentially. And I think, in some organizations, we aren't using any of that, right? We're just still throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping that something is going to stick. And I think we have to move away from that. And so if there's one big thing that I would say to associations is really lean into doing more targeted messaging, because it will underscore value proposition for your members and your customers. It will create, going back to the beginning of the podcast where we talked about creating that sense of community and a feeling of belonging to the organization. Those are the tools that you want to use to help get people there. Because if you send me something, for example, if I'm retired and you send me something about a workshop for students, what? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yes.
those are
Yes.
the types of things that happen with those one size fits all emails. So and it just really makes the organization look tone deaf, right? Or if I'm, in an executive role and you send me something for an emerging leader, right? Or something you're doing for emerging leaders, again, tone deaf. So I think we have to do what we need to do in terms of implementing technology and training our teams around how to do more of this segmentation and lean into it.
Oh, excellent answer. I can totally, like, your pet peeve is my pet peeve.
Yeah.
So if you imagine your association members receiving emails that have nothing to do, especially if they've changed the focus of their career or they have like moved into a different zone, they're no longer the young professional.
Yeah.
Please, people, please, like, let it go. Okay.
Yeah.
Or
And
like,
KiKi, can
move
I add
on.
one thing to that?
Yeah.
Because I think you raised a really good point there about the evolution of people and like what we do and where we are in our lives. That's also why it's so important for associations to periodically go back to members and ask them to update their member profiles. Because if, for someone like me, for example, I had talked to someone from ASAE for something just yesterday, right? And she said to me, have you updated your profile? And I was like, I haven't. And I thought to myself, I've got to go in there and do that because some things have changed, right? And so I went in immediately and updated my profile. But it struck a nerve with me because I thought to myself, I do that stuff in my day job. I remind people of that. But I had forgotten even in my own. So it's important because I joined ASAE I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but it was a minute, right? Like it was a minute. And I started as an entry level professional doing basic customer service, answering phones when I joined the organization. That is not where I am right now. And so if I never updated my profile, if I never went back in to give them some idea of how things have evolved for me, they'd be sending me messages that didn't suit me. So I think there is some accountability on our side of that too, as associations for reminding people to do that and just asking, because they'll do it if you ask.
They will do it if you ask. You have to remind them. And also, those are the times like it's like, how do you get that information, that data to add to your database? It's in different asks along the way. And, I think that sometimes the strategy, and I'm speaking back to your pet peeve again, which is like, always be thinking about, don't ask for more data than what you need, but ask for the data that would be meaningful, that you can help you cater and build and offer things that are more meaningful to your members. Please, please. Okay. We're looking into the future, Cam. We're looking into your crystal ball of marketing for association. What do you see? What is that vision of the future when you think about associations and marketing and you say, here's what we need to pay attention to. This is the thing. These are the things that we need to see. A bold prediction.
A bold prediction. I think a bold prediction is that we are going to see the more innovative and forward-thinking associations start to behave more like media companies. In the sense, let me clarify that. In the sense that they are going to have a greater focus on creating compelling content, right? It is going to be, like we talked about earlier, it's going to be less about pushing out the messages that we just want people to hear, and more about building dialogue and coming together on content within our communities and creating that value, those value driven interactions. And I think out of that will come organizations that center storytelling as a key component of their marketing. That is the thing right right now, and I think it will be for some time to come, because people do tend to trust, like we're in an era right now where people trust authentic storytelling and hearing about others' experiences with your product, with your event, with your service, with your organization as a whole, more than they do the polished ad, right?
Mhm.
So I think, there's a place for the more polished advertising, but I think that storytelling is going to take center stage, and it already is in many ways. So I think that's my bold prediction, is that associations are going to lean more into that.
If you could teach one workshop to new association marketers, what would the title be? Ooh, ha, 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 ha.
Building authentic connections.
Building authentic connections. Okay, tell us more, a little bit more. What would I love this? Is this community? Is this
Yes.
like, let's
Yeah.
tell me more.
Yeah, I think it would be focused more on some of the things that we've talked about, like how to lean into the creation of compelling content by leveraging community. And
Ooh,
I think
yeah.
that's something that's going to move the needle for marketing in a very unique way. I think it's particularly powerful in membership marketing, which is a niche marketing. Like a lot of times, and again, unless you have an association where that you really understand and lean into membership marketing for the niche area that it is. It's different from marketing for an event. It's different from marketing a product. It's very relational,
Mhm.
and so I think that marketers really need to understand that leveraging community and leaning into that in your marketing and telling the stories, highlighting your members, understanding the whys of why, not just why people join, but why they stay, is really a game changer for organizations. And so that's what I would focus on.
All right. I love it. Cam, thank you so much for joining me today.